Hello best learners, this is Mustafa here at Learn with the Best, and today we're going to be discussing the 15th law of power, crushing your enemy totally. First, I'm going to define the law for you, and then we'll go over a story from my past where I was being bullied and how I handled it. And then finally, we'll end with a story from the book. Here's the law. All great leaders since Moses have known that a feared enemy must be crushed completely. If one ember is left alight, no matter how dimly it smolders, a fire will eventually break out. More is lost through stopping halfway than through total annihilation. The enemy will recover and they will seek revenge. So crush the enemy, not only in body but in spirit. I'm not gonna lie, this is one of my favorite laws. Let me ask you this, how many times have we all seen a movie or read a book where the good guy wins, but because he's so good and honorable and noble, he lets his enemy go free, right? You've got to get this silly idea out of your mind right now, because this isn't how the world works. That nonsense is just for the movies. If you allow the enemy to recover, then he will bide his time and he will return. You have to make sure that you've crushed your enemy enough so that there is no chance for him to recover and seek his revenge at a later time. And this can be demonstrated with bullies, right? A bully will pick on someone who is weaker than him. And in fact, I was bullied from time to time as a kid. And not because I was weak, but because I was lazy. The bullies mistook my laziness for weakness. I remember one particular morning when I was sleeping on the school bus and there was a bully who had crawled under the seats and tied my shoelaces together. And when the bus finally arrived at school, I woke up to get up off the bus. I nearly fell and all of the kids had a great big laugh at my expense. Okay, fine. I thought it was over, one and done. They had their fun and now we can all move on. But a few days later, I fell asleep on the bus again and the bully crawled under the seats and tied my shoelaces together again, for the joy and amusement of all of the other kids on the bus. Suffice it to say, I was not very popular, and on the contrary, I was perfectly fine in my own space with my own group of friends, content with who I was, and minding my own business and doing my own thing. I could let small things go, but I did not want this to become a habit. I had not done anything to this bully or to any of the other kids laughing. Why were they experiencing so much pleasure at my pain? Were their home lives so horrible? Were they being secretly bullied by their parents? Was that why they wanted to bully me? I didn't know, and frankly, I didn't care. Enough was enough. If it had happened twice already, I knew the same bully would strike again. And so the very next day, I pretended to be asleep on the bus. And as soon as I heard the bully crawling under the seats, I knew a showdown was about to take place. The instant I felt his hands on my shoes, I lifted my feet up with the speed of a bird and slammed them down onto his hands like an elephant. I felt his hands crush under my feet, and I heard him let out a silent scream of agony. And in that moment, the bully had become my victim. Hearing him moaning under the seat was now pure joy to my ears. I had my revenge. I doubled down and pressed my feet even harder and stronger, grinding my heels into his precious soft skin. 20 or so minutes later, when the bus finally arrived at school and all the other kids emptied out of the bus, out of the kindness of my heart, I finally allowed him to slowly slide his bruised and battered hands away from my sneakers of death. As he scrambled under the seat, I got up from mine and waited for him to get up. I was now in the middle of the aisle and he had nowhere to go. He couldn't even get out of the bus because I was blocking the path. I didn't say a word to him. I just stepped closer so that we were face to face, chest to chest, only about an inch apart, and I stared him down like a hawk. He tried to avoid eye contact. He was obviously ashamed and defeated, crushed in body and spirit. It was probably about a good 30 seconds or so before the bus driver started saying something or another, and then I finally moved aside and let the bully pass. This guy never bothered me again. He stayed clear out of my path from that point forward. Now let's look at a story from the book. But before we do that, I need your help with YouTube's algorithm. please smash that thumbs up button below, because if you don't, then unfortunately YouTube is simply not going to show this video to anyone else. Please also subscribe and click on that bell icon, because if you don't, then again YouTube won't let you know when a new video is uploaded. And if you want to transform yourself from a lamb to a lion, then check out my course pinned in the top comment below. I will teach you the tools that you need for success, but you have to actually step up and put in the work on yourself. This course is not for everyone, because the majority of the population are sheep, but for those very few of us who do want to walk the path of a lion, this is the course for you. Alright, back to the video. Let's look at some Chinese history for our next story here. Once upon a time, a beautiful young woman named Wu was part of a harem to Emperor Taisung. This imperial club of women was a dangerous place, full of young concubines vying to become the emperor's favorite. Wu's beauty won her in this battle, but knowing that she could easily be replaced, she kept her eye on the future. Wu managed to seduce the emperor's son, Cao Sung, and so, when the emperor died and Cao Sung took over the throne, Wu suffered the same fate to which all wives and concubines of a deceased emperor were bound by law. She was forced into entering the convent for what was supposed to be the rest of her life. For 7 years, Wu schemed to escape. By communicating in secret with the new emperor and by befriending his wife, the Empress, she managed to get a highly unusual royal edict allowing her to return to the palace. Wu feigned a friendship with the Empress while being a concubine to the emperor. The Empress was not able to have children, and so when Wu became pregnant with the emperor's child, Wu smothered her own baby and blamed it on the Empress, saying that the Empress was jealous of Wu and jealous that she couldn't give the emperor a child of her own. The poor Empress was charged with murder and she was executed. Wu was crowned as the new Empress. The emperor was too addicted to his life of pleasure, and so he gladly gave up the reins of government to Wu, who was from then on known as Empress Wu. And even though Empress Wu was now in a position of great power, she did not feel secure. She was 41 years old and began to fear that her beautiful young niece was becoming the emperor's favorite. So she poisoned the woman, and then years later she poisoned her own son, who was going to be the next emperor. And then the next eldest son, who was now the crowned prince, was exiled on false charges, trumped up by his own mother. When the emperor finally died, Wu managed to have the son after that declared unfit for the throne. All of this meant that it was her youngest, most unintelligent son who finally became emperor. And in this way, Empress Wu was able to continue her rule. Over the next several years, there were many palace coups, all of which failed and all of the conspirators executed. There was no one left to challenge Wu. She proclaimed herself a divine descendant of Buddha, and she was named Holy and Divine Emperor of China. Wu ruled China in relative peace, and finally at the age of 80, she was forced to abdicate. So how do we interpret this? Empress Wu was energetic and intelligent. At the time, there was no glory available for an ambitious woman beyond a few years in the imperial harem. In Wu's remarkable rise to the top, she was never naive. She knew that any hesitation, any momentary weakness would be her end. If every time she got rid of a rival and a new one appeared, then the solution was simple. She had to crush them all or be killed herself. Other emperors before her had followed the same path to the top, but Wu was a woman and had next to no chance to gain power, and so she had to be extremely ruthless. Empress Wu's 40-year reign was one of the longest in Chinese history, and although the story of her bloodthirsty rise to power is well known in China, she is considered one of the period's most able and effective rulers. The wisdom behind crushing the enemy is ancient, and its first practitioner may have been Moses, who learned it from God himself. when he parted the Red Sea for the Jews and then let the water flow back over the pursuing Egyptians so that not so much as even one of them remained. When Moses returned from Mount Sinai with the 10 Commandments and found his people worshipping a golden calf, he had every last offender slaughtered. So what do we learn from this law? In today's day and age, we live in a free society where we don't have to worry about being in a position similar to Empress Wu's. And so our greatest enemies are often our own selves. We have to break free from the sheep mentality, and we have to learn how to be lions. Lions among lambs, taking the things that we want from our own lives. If you're interested in learning more about this idea, then again, I have a course pinned in the top comment below. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope that you learned something new. If you like my YouTube content and you want to support me and the creation of even more content, then please check out my Patreon link pinned in the top comment below. I upload new videos every Friday for my Patreon subscribers that go deeper into my life regarding the 48 laws. These videos are a bit more raw and untamed than my usual videos here on YouTube. And if you're a patron of mine already, then I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, because it's people like you that make all of this even possible in the first place. I hope you enjoyed this animated video on Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power, Law number 15, crush your enemy totally. And remember, you only retain about 10% of what you learned the first time around, so watch this video through a few times and then come back to it again and again in order to really understand and ingrain all of the material into your mind. Thanks, and I'll see you next time for Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power, Law number 16.